I've worked at Dixon's Diner off Route 19 for nearly 5 years. If you've ever driven through Millbrook County, you've probably seen it. The place with the neon coffee cup flickering above the parking lot. The sign that says, "Open 24 hours," even though half the time we close at 2. We serve the usual small-town crowd. Farmers with their mud-caked boots, truckers passing through, high school kids sneaking milkshakes after football games. It's nothing glamorous, but it's steady work, and steady matters when you're paying rent on a one-bedroom apartment above the laundromat. The nights are quiet most of the time. You get to know the rhythm of the place, refilling coffee for the same 3 men who sit in the corner booth, dropping off pie slices for the couple who always argue about politics, cashing out the lone trucker who eats in silence with the ball game humming from the TV. There's comfort in routine. Comfort in knowing that by midnight, the parking lot will be mostly empty, the jukebox will play its last song, and I'll lock up with nothing more to worry about than the drive home on an empty stretch of highway. Or at least, that's how it used to be. It started with the man in the flannel shirt. He came in around 10 one night, sat at the counter instead of a booth. He was polite, ordered coffee, eggs over easy, paid in cash, left a tip folded neatly under the mug. Nothing unusual, except he came back the next night. Same time, same seat, same order, and the night after that. I've seen my share of regulars. Half the town could be called that, but something about him stood out. The way he watched the door and the chrome reflection behind the counter. The way he lingered even after his plate was cleared. A week later, he started leaving little things with his tip. At first, it was cookies wrapped in foil. "Homemade," he said, smiling like it was a secret between us. Then it was flowers, daisies wrapped in newspaper. A week after that, a small note scribbled on the back of a receipt. "Thanks for always being kind." I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was lonely, maybe he was just trying to be nice. But then the notes changed. The first one that bothered me said, "I noticed you buy your groceries at Clayton's Market." I like that place too. My stomach turned cold when I read it. He'd seen me outside of work. The next one, "You park by the oak tree near the laundromat." Smart spot. Less chance of someone dinging your door. That night, I sat in my car with the doors locked, staring at the tree he mentioned, convinced I'd see him step out from behind it. By then, every part of my routine felt exposed. When I walked home from the diner after closing, I heard footsteps echo mine on the quiet street. When I drove the highway, I checked my rearview mirror every half mile, half expecting to see headlights that matched every turn I made. One night, I left the diner close to 2 a.m., the lot empty except for my old Corolla. My keys shook in my hand as I crossed the pavement. Somewhere behind me, gravel crunched. I spun, but the lot was still, the neon sign buzzing overhead. I ran the last few steps to my car, locked the doors, and didn't breathe until I was halfway down the highway. I told Sheriff Lowell the next morning, sat across from his cluttered desk, the notes folded in my hand like proof of my own paranoia. He read them slowly, lips pressed in a line. Then he slid them back across the desk. "Not much we can do," he said. "Nothing here's a direct threat." I wanted to scream. Not a threat? He knew where I shopped, where I lived, where I parked my car. I asked about a restraining order. Lowell shook his head. Judges want a clear incident, something they can call harassment. This, He tapped the folded notes. This just looks like friendliness gone a little too far. I left the station more shaken than when I went in, because what he meant was clear. Until this man laid hands on me or broke into my home, or worse, the law couldn't help me. And that's when the fear settled into something heavier. Not just fear of him, but fear of what would happen when nobody would stop him. It happened on a Thursday. The diner was slow, the kind of night when even the jukebox seemed tired. By 1 a.m., the parking lot was empty. I lingered inside, wiping counters that didn't need wiping, dreading the walk to my car. When I finally stepped outside, the lot was dark except for the neon glow. My Corolla sat under the flickering sign, and leaning against the driver's side door was the man in the flannel shirt. He didn't move as I froze on the concrete, just smiled, hands in his pockets like we were old friends. "Thought I'd wait to walk you out," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. My keys dug into my palm as I forced myself to speak. "You need to leave." He tilted his head, still smiling. "I just wanted to see you safe. I worry, you know?" Out here all alone, I backed toward the diner door, but he stepped forward, closing the space between us. Headlights washed over the lot just then, Ray's pickup. He'd come to walk me out like he sometimes did when shifts ran late. The man in the flannel froze in the glare. His smile faltered. Without another word, he slipped into the shadows at the edge of the lot, disappearing into the night. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order. This time, with Ray beside me, Lowell couldn't brush it off. The order went through. On paper, he wasn't allowed within 100 feet of me, my home, or my job. On paper, I was safe. But fear doesn't end with a signature. Even now, I check my rearview mirror every block on the drive home. I keep the curtains drawn tight, the locks double-checked, a baseball bat under my bed. Every time I hear footsteps in the parking lot, my heart lurches, certain it's him waiting just out of sight. I haven't seen him since that night, not once. But when I walk out of the diner after closing, the neon sign buzzing above me, I still feel it, the weight of his eyes, somewhere in the dark. And that's the part no restraining order covers, because once someone lets you know they're watching, you can never unfeel it. I never used to think much about the drive between Millbrook and Ashford. 30 miles of flat farmland, silos leaning like tired giants, and the occasional gas station clinging to life on the side of Route 17. I'd made that drive 100 times. Work, groceries, Sunday visits to my folks. Nothing ever happened there. It was the kind of road you forgot even as you drove it. That night was no different, or at least it shouldn't have been. The sun had gone down an hour earlier, leaving a low orange glow bleeding over the horizon. The air was sticky in that Midwestern way, humid even though September was rolling in. My gas tank was half full, but I pulled into the rest stop anyway, just outside of Ashford. You know the type. 2 vending machines, a row of buzzing lights that attracted more moths than travelers, and a bathroom that always smelled like bleach, failing to mask something worse. I parked under the farthest light, the one that flickered every other second. It felt safer than the shadows, though I don't know why. That's when I noticed the car. It was an old Chevy Cavalier, pale blue, parked crooked across two spaces like someone had pulled in fast and never fixed it. The driver's side door was shut, windows fogged from the humidity. In the back seat, barely visible under the orange glow of the street lamp, was a backpack. Nothing unusual about that, except it was sitting upright, buckled like a kid's car seat. I didn't think much of it. Maybe someone ran inside to use the restroom. Maybe they'd been napping. Still, something about the way it sat there, untouched and too neat, made me look twice before walking into the building. By the time I came back out, the parking lot was quiet. My car, the flickering light, the Chevy Cavalier. Only this time, the backpack was gone. I froze, my keys halfway in the lock. Maybe the owner had come back and taken it, but I hadn't heard any doors open. I hadn't seen anyone, and if they had taken it, why was the back door still shut tight, windows fogged the same way as before? I told myself I was imagining things, that the night was playing tricks, and got in my car. But I drove the rest of the way home with my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every mile, convinced I'd see that Cavalier following me. The next morning, I caught the local news on Channel 8 while making coffee. Sheriff's Department was investigating a missing person. 19-year-old college sophomore, last seen leaving Millbrook around 9 p.m. in a pale blue Chevy Cavalier. The anchor smiled the way they always do when delivering bad news, like the script demanded it. Authorities say no foul play is suspected at this time. Friends and family describe her as responsible, hard-working, and unlikely to vanish on her own. I didn't spill my coffee, but my hand trembled just enough for the spoon to clatter against the mug, because I had seen that car. And I had seen that backpack, and now it was gone. For 2 days, I kept my mouth shut. I told myself it wasn't my business. People saw cars every day. People misplaced backpacks. Maybe she had just taken off. But then the flyers started showing up. Bright pink paper stapled to telephone poles, taped inside the window at Dixon's Diner, flapping in the September wind outside the post office. Her name was Lindsay Harrow, 19 years old, student at a community college in Ashford. Smiling photo, cropped from what looked like a high school graduation. The kind of photo meant to capture a whole future, not an obituary. The details hit me harder than I expected. Last seen driving a 1998 pale blue Chevy Cavalier, plate number K92-14H. Disappeared somewhere between Millbrook and Ashford, along Route 17. If you saw anything suspicious, contact the Sheriff's Department immediately. I stared at one of the flyers taped to the diner window while waiting for my coffee to go. The cashier, a kid who couldn't have been more than 17, said, "They're saying she stopped at the rest stop that night." The words landed in my stomach like a stone. That evening, my brother-in-law, Ray, knocked on my door. Ray's a firefighter, the kind of man who can't sit still when there's work to be done. "You coming to the search?" he asked, already wearing his reflective vest. I hesitated. "Search? They're calling volunteers. Sheriff's Department's organizing. Couple dozen folks combing the woods off the tracks tonight. She might have run out of gas, tried walking." He shrugged. "You know how it goes." I knew. Everyone in Millbrook knew. People disappeared sometimes, not often, but enough that search parties weren't unusual. A hunter lost in the woods, an Alzheimer's patient wandering out of their house, a car wreck hidden in a ditch until somebody stumbled on it weeks later. I told him I'd come. We met at the edge of the old railroad tracks. where the weeds had grown waist-high around rusted steel. The place looked abandoned decades ago, but the rails still cut a scar through the trees. A sheriff's cruiser idled nearby, headlights pointed toward the tree line, radio crackling with half-heard chatter. Sheriff Lowell himself was there, round-bellied with a permanent sunburn and a hat that seemed too big for his head. He gave us the usual speech about safety, sticking together, reporting anything suspicious. We fanned out, flashlights cutting through the dark. The air smelled like wet leaves and creosote. Every snap of a twig made me jump. After an hour, someone shouted. We all converged, stumbling through the brush until we reached a small clearing near the tracks. A group of volunteers stood in a tight circle, beams of light trained on something half buried in the dirt. It was a shirt, white once, now stained dark. The front torn open, buttons missing. Ray crouched, careful not to touch it. That blood? Nobody answered. Sheriff Lowell finally pushed through, grunted, and waved us all back. That's enough for tonight. We'll take it from here, the volunteers murmured in protest. Someone said, shouldn't we keep looking? But Lowell's voice was sharp. I said we'll take it from here. And that was it. They herded us back toward the tracks like cattle. Later, in the diner parking lot, Ray and I sat in his truck, the engine idling, the smell of burnt coffee between us. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, he muttered, I don't like the way they shut it down. I stared out at the neon sign buzzing above the diner. The parking lot was empty, except for one 18-wheeler, its driver nowhere in sight. The truck's hazard lights blinked, steady and hollow. I saw her car, I said, almost whispering, at the rest stop. 2 nights ago, Ray's head snapped toward me. You sure? Yeah, same make, same color, backpack in the back seat. When I came out, it was gone. Ray swore under his breath. You tell Lowell? I shook my head. Something about the way the sheriff had ended the search made me certain he didn't want to hear it. Ray drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. Then we find out ourselves. 2 nights later, we checked the motel off the interstate. It was the kind of place you'd only stop at if you were too tired to keep driving. Single row of rooms, a buzzing neon vacancy sign, a soda machine that ate quarters more often than it spat out cans. The clerk barely looked up when Ray flashed his badge. Not that it mattered. Firefighters didn't have authority, but in towns like ours, uniforms carried weight. We're looking for a girl, Ray said. Pale blue Cavalier, 19. The clerk scratched his neck, eyes shifting. Ain't seen nothing. But I could tell he was lying. His gaze kept flicking toward room 6, curtains drawn tight, even though the rest were open. When we walked past, I noticed something. A shoe. Women's sneaker, scuffed and muddy, lying just under the doorframe like it had been dropped mid-step. Ray reached for the handle, but the door was locked. He looked at me, jaw tight. Before we could say anything, the rumble of tires on gravel snapped our heads around. A sheriff's cruiser pulled into the lot, lights off, moving slow. Lowell. He rolled down the window. Evening, gentlemen. Motel's off limits. Investigation ongoing. His tone left no room for argument. Ray opened his mouth, but I gripped his arm. Something in Lowell's eyes made the hair on my neck stand up. Cold, flat, like we weren't men he knew, but obstacles in his way. We left without a word. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the image of the sneaker, half hidden under that door, like whoever wore it had been trying to get out. The days blurred after that. Search parties dwindled, flyers grew weather-stained and torn, and the story on the news shrank from nightly coverage to a footnote. No foul play suspected, they kept repeating, but I couldn't shake it. Not the backpack, not the shirt, not the sneaker half hidden under room 6. Ray couldn't either. He started carrying a notebook, scribbling down license plates, jotting times he saw sheriff's cruisers parked in odd places. I thought he was losing it, but then one night he called me after his shift. "Meet me at the old hunting cabin," he said. "Found something." The cabin was a mile past the edge of town, half rotted, and used mostly by teenagers looking to drink away boredom. When I pulled up, Ray's truck was already there, headlights cutting across the trees. He met me at the porch, flashlight trembling in his grip. "Look." Inside, the place reeked of mildew and stale smoke, but that wasn't what froze me. On the floor, half buried under a tarp, was a pile of belongings. A phone, cracked screen, a spiral-bound notebook with doodles in the margins, a keychain shaped like a graduation cap, and a driver's license, Lindsay Harrow. Ray's face was pale in the flashlight beam. I found it stashed under the floorboards. Somebody's been using this place before I could speak. A crunch outside made us both spin. Tires on gravel. Through the slats of the boarded-up window, headlights swept across the clearing. A cruiser. Lowell. Ray's whisper was ragged. He followed me. We killed our lights and crouched low, hearts hammering. The cruiser idled for a long minute, engine humming like a growl, before finally rolling away. We waited another 10 before daring to breathe. Ray wanted to take the evidence straight to the state police. I agreed. But when we came back the next day, the cabin was empty. The tarp, the license, the phone, gone. In their place was a single object nailed to the wall. The sneaker, the same one from the motel. After that, Ray pulled back. He stopped calling me, stopped showing up at the diner. When I finally cornered him outside the firehouse, he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Drop it," he muttered, "for your own sake." Drop it, I wanted to argue, but something in his voice, defeat, maybe fear, made me keep quiet. 2 weeks later, the diner's neon sign flickered its last and went dark for good. The motel shuttered, chain link fence thrown up around it. Bulldozers moved in like vultures. By the end of the month, room 6 was rubble, the lot paved flat. Condemned, the paper said, unsafe structure. The hunting cabin burned down in an unexplained fire a week later, and the rest stopped. Closed for renovations. It was like the whole stretch of Route 17 was being erased, one piece at a time. Sometimes I drive it anyway, late at night when sleep won't come. The road is emptier than it used to be, like even the truckers avoid it. Every mile feels longer, darker, like I'm passing through somewhere I don't belong. I still expect to see that Chevy Cavalier parked under the buzzing light. I still imagine the backpack in the back seat waiting like a warning. But the lot is all but empty. No car, no backpack, no trace of Lindsay Harrow, only the faint echo of a sheriff's voice in my memory, sharp and final. We'll take it from here. And that's where it ends. At least, that's where it ends for me. For Lindsay, I'm not so sure. Because last week, taped to the glass of the post office, I saw a new flyer. Different face. Different name. Same stretch of road.